welcome to this webinar by International Council for Circular Economy. ICC is a forum of some supremely talented people from an eclectic range of sectors with a common vision of going towards a society where sustainable development is the order of the day. Ubiquitous enough, what we stand for has to be what we stand on. So before we begin this webinar, I would like to extend my warm wishes on behalf of the ICCE. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming all of you to this webinar on management and operations of plastic waste for material recovery. ICC is the largest international network for professionals, corporates, and organizations working in circular economy in India. ICC operates on three strong pillars: educate, innovate, and inspire, to establish strong connections amongst the circular economy community. It shares best practices to have an impact at a local and a global level simultaneously. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. So we have Chris with us. Chris White has been a consultant in the fields of natural resource management and sustainable development for 28 years and moved into the fields of integrated waste management and waste beneficent technologies in 2000. For the last 20 years, Chris has focused on the development of integrated and sustainable approaches to waste management, incorporating a variety of economically viable waste beneficent technologies that frame sustainable development and the creation of green jobs. His vision is to unlock a multitude of opportunities to create a complete waste materials recovery value chain that tackles every component of the waste stream as a sustainable model, attracting investment, saving landfill volumes and cost, creating jobs, emphasizing social development, and maximizing environmental benefits. Chris has won many awards for his passion and drive, making him a truly respected leader for sustainable tech. We also have Abhay Deshpande with us. Abhay founded Marjack in 2007 to create India's first SaaS-based enterprise e-commerce platform. This company would go on to build SaaS products for global markets spanning MENA and APAC, and Abhay was instrumental in conceptualizing the company's vision, product market fit, sales, team, and its eventual scale. Under Abhay's leadership, Marja grew from 0 to 175 employees, acquired marquee customers such as Walmart, Unilever, Pizza Hut, and enabled transactions worth 1,000 plus crore per annum on its platform. Abhay's latest venture, Recycle, is a digital technology company transforming the waste management recycling ecosystem in India. Recycle connects different stakeholders in the waste value chain and enables transactions between them with transparency and traceability. Recycle is carving a niche in the waste management space and working with leading brands like Hindustan Unilever, PepsiCo, Marico, Johnson & Johnson, Panasonic, UNDP, etc. on several circular economy initiatives. Our third speaker is Mr. Prabjot Soti. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us right now because someone close in his family expired today, but he will be surely joining us in a little while. So Prabjot Sodhi served as Country Program Manager, Global Environment Facility, Small Grant Program UNDP, CEE for 14 years. He was awarded the Most Excellent Order of the Member of British Empire in 1998 by the Government of United Kingdom for promoting sustainable development practices among tribals in India. In September 2012, the George Washington University, Washington, D.C., USA, honored him with the Talented Conservator Award in recognition of his contributions in the field of biodiversity conservation and livelihoods. Several of his works have been published in international and national journals. Unfortunately, he is not with us right now, but we hope to see him soon. Shalini is a postgraduate environmentalist and a climate change visionary. She has been actively working in sustainability and developed the Zero Waste program, which helps entities to reduce their carbon footprint. Her project Zero made headlines when it was awarded by the Uttarakhand state government. An active social worker, she has several awards that add to her laurels. She has been recognized and awarded by Social Founder London, Global Goodwill Ambassador, the US, ICUNR India, Currently working as an advisor in sustainability and circular economy, she is chairing the International Council for Circular Economy. An active speaker, she takes up initiatives in promoting educational opportunities, leadership development, entrepreneurship, and empowerment of youth and women. She is associated with MSME as Influencer 2019 in the circular economy sector and for Delhi government on their entrepreneurship mindset program. She is mentor to 7 women-led enterprises. Her first book happens to be the first book on circular economy in India. So our session today is on the topic management and operations of plastic waste and material recovery. MRFs are materials reclaimed or multi-reuse facilities. Our speakers today will be discussing an overall strategy in the management and operations of plastic waste for material and energy recovery from waste and less landfilling. Now, I would like to hand over the mic to our moderator come speaker, Ms. Shalini. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Susanna. Joining us. I would like to thank our speakers, Chris, Abhay, and Mr. Sodi, who will be joining us very soon. I'm so thankful to him. In the morning today, I received a message and he said, Shalini, I'll be late, but I'll definitely join despite the kind of circumstances. So I'm very grateful to him for that. Uh, Once again, welcome to all our delegates here for joining us today. As we all know, we've been talking about the packaging industry and we're talking about the material recovery centers which have been set up by different entities, including UNDP in India. And we are talking about the packaging industry today. When I was reading about some statistics, so I came across one of the study which was conducted by University of Southern Indiana, which says that about 1/3 of the average dump is made up of the packaging material. And one of the European studies suggests that the plastic constitute almost 19% of the waste generated from the packaging material. This obviously shows the kind of importance we all have to look at when we talk about plastic waste, when we look at packaging waste, and the material recovery facilities. So we have our esteemed speakers today who have been working in this domain and have huge experience. So without any further delay, I can straight get into the question answer session. Uh, Chris, the vision of your company, I can see, is to make people more profitable. And in the process, while you do so, you also help to save the planet from harmful, outdated technologies and manage waste in a seamless process. What do you think are the recommendations, according to you, that you would like to give to people when it comes to plastic waste?
Thank you for the question, Shalini, and welcome to everybody who's joined the webinar. The first question is always packed with details that one needs to unpack. And I think the first thing we need to do is look at understanding the issues around plastic waste. Plastic waste is somewhat of an enigma from my perspective. People need to understand that in the global industry, plastics manufacturing industry, for years, they've stated that the answer to the problem is looking at recycling. And that plastics are not the problem, but it's rather our management of the plastic waste that's the problem. But we need to try and unpack that. So the issue is that a lot of people consider that conventional recycling is a mechanical option, where they take a single plastic source that goes through a washing, granulating, and pelletizing sort of process, and it's then made back into a new plastic that can be fed back into the manufacturing process. And most people also understand, that there are different types of recyclable plastics, and I think we're all very used to the codes that we see on the identification codes on plastic. And most people see that there's 7 different types of plastic from the recycling codes, and that lulls us into some sort of sense of false security that these are all recyclable. The reality is that there are thousands of different types of plastics, not 7, and there's different combinations thereof as well. I always maintain that item number 7, for example, plastic number 7 is essentially any plastic that was invented after 1987 or any combination thereof. So it hides a huge discrepancy and diversity of plastics within that. So conventional recycling methods are only really able to use the pure plastics, and I define those as polyethylene terephthalate or PET, your polyolefins, HDPE, LDPE, your styrenes, polystyrene, polypropylene, and PVC or polyvinyl chloride. And realistically, these only represent about 30% of the plastics produced. The rest of them are actually chemical variations of these 6 main products, and that doesn't even include a lot of the industrial plastics. So if we look at polyurethane, polycarbonate, adenylene butadiene styrene or ABS, there are polyamides like nylon. There's polyester, epoxy, acrylic, Teflon, etc. So if you take one of the most recyclable forms of that, for example, polypropylene, we need to understand this is made up of different types in itself. So within polypropylenes, you get homopolymers, you get impact copolymers, you get expanded terpolymers and high melt strength polypropylenes. And the high melt strength ones, for example, are made even more complicated through processes like BOPP, which is biaxially orientated polypropylene. And that can be metallized and made more complicated. So if you look at metallized chip packets, for example, would be an example of that. Or it's blended with polyethylenes or PET in a multi-laminate. So there's a lot of complications in terms of the plastic. And the reality is that there are solutions for all of these plastics, but not as per our conventional understanding of the mechanical recycling methods. So for full solutions, we need to employ chemical or thermal processing or composite applications using complex polymer processing additives. So what I'm trying to get to is that the main recommendation I can give to people regarding plastic waste is to understand the waste, first and foremost. There is an international drive within the plastics industry to start designing for recyclability, and that needs to be driven by people, specifically in terms of consumers being informed. And it's vital where people need to understand what it is that they're trying to deal with. So regardless of those complexities, people need to ensure that plastics are separated for processing and recycling. And if we can't collect them, we can't process them. And that's the simple truth of the matter. Technological innovations and advancements over the last decade or so have abounded in terms of tackling problematic plastics. And we should still hold industry responsible to ensure that plastic is made more recyclable. But when it comes to getting recommendations for people to understand plastic waste, is first of all, understand the issue and understand the complexity of plastic waste. The simple reality is that we expect the plastic production to increase by about 40%, potentially over the next 10 to 15 years. And there's going to be a lot more plastics in circulation. Plastics industry have invested hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of new plastic generation manufacturing plants. And we need to understand that the problem is going to get worse, and we need to make sure that we have the solutions available. Thank you.
I think very important, Chris, you are actually kind of even more telling about the kind of situation which is going to get worse. And when you said plastic is not just 7 types, even more than 7, this comes as a kind of a shock to me. And someone who is not a plastic expert doesn't know about that. So I am just wondering, how do we talk about recycling to such kind of a massive plastic production, plus the kind of plastics that we are talking about? So obviously the problem is much bigger than what we think about it. That brings me to Abhay. Abhay, you have been working, your Recycle has been working on plastic recycling with the large corporate consumer companies, government agencies, and you do have a tailor-made consultancy services focusing on the different areas of sustainability. What does your experience say about plastic recycling when it comes to India?
Thanks, Shalini. I think the whole plastic recycling has been a subject which we have been talking about for last decades or so, because the plastic has become, the plastic littering, plastic is not a problem, plastic littering has become a problem, and it has one of the biggest source of pollution, as well as the landfill, or you take at the ocean also. So I think there is a lot of awareness and amongst the stakeholder which is there today about the plastic problem. We at Recycle, what we are trying to do is we are trying to connect the stakeholders across the ecosystem. If you look at the waste management ecosystem in India, you live this does exist for last 60, 70 years, and there are millions of people who are working into it. from the rack picker to the kabadiwala to a larger kabadiwala, a aggregator, a guys who do the baling, sorting, and large MRF centers. Municipal corporation runs small DRCC centers. So there has been a disintegrated ecosystem does exist in this country, and then the recyclers. Recyclers also, we see two kinds of recyclers. One is a formal recycler, one is a informal one kind of informal recyclers. So what we have seen, what we have tried to do, when we looked at this space and we looked at the challenges which every stakeholder faces, and we felt that everyone is working in isolation. He's working in his own world as such, and these people are not really connected. The rack picker or a kabadiwala does not know who the recycler is, and the recycler does not know from where the material comes to him. Same time, the organizations, the bulk generators like large corporate like Infosys, Verizon, Accenture, to a five-star restaurants, three-star restaurants, all these guys generate a lot of waste. And thankfully, due to all the awareness got built, they are also aware about the sustainability goals and SDG goals. There is awareness, at least among certain level of the corporate. So they also are conscious about how do I treat my waste generated by me. I would like to see how it is getting channelized. I don't want to see it going to a landfill. I don't want to see it going to a ocean water. So they actually were also looking for some solution where they can get that traceability. The biggest challenge we face in industry, because it is completely disintegrated, like there is no data. Today also we have a report of 2014 or 2010. Somebody did some analysis that each person has 150 grams of plastic, right? How they arrived it, nobody knows about it. And we had extrapolated that and said we have 15 million metric ton of plastic. I personally feel after spending 5 years in industry, that number is at least double than what is being projected. We are generating that much of plastic. So the data, nobody knows how much plastic Hyderabad generates. It's just a multiplication of the population by some 0.25 kgs. Doesn't really make sense. So the biggest challenge in the waste management, which we saw, that there is no data. Why the data is not there? Because there is no digital way of capturing the data. Manual way will not work. So with these challenges, at the same time, I heard in one of the seminar and report also that this industry is so large. I heard that 2% of the Indian population gets food every day because someone in their family is working in waste management, from collection to recycling. So it's complete chain across the categories, not just plastic, e-waste, everything. So it's such a large, almost 3 crore people gets food because of this model. And even IT doesn't have that much of reach, frankly. So we really thought, can we do something here and can we disrupt it by connecting all the stakeholder and bringing more traceability and transparency into this. And that is where we came up with multiple solutions. We have a solution where a bulk generator can dispose his waste by using our app. He can just download a recycle app and say that I have this waste and I want somebody to pick it up. It's like an Uber kind of system. And then we look at a local partner or a DRCC center in that area, put that request to them, then he goes, picks up the material, and the payment is made through our system to the generator for the money. Same way we came up with a consumer solution where the consumer can also do a drop of the waste which is generated. It include all the waste together. And he gets incentives like Amazon voucher or Flipkart vouchers against that. So there is an incentive for that. Same time, all these informal guys, like these all aggregators and all these people, we bought in our system. They were doing business for years. We said, let's do it in a better way. Let's do it a more formal way. Let's do a GST billing for everyone. So we just connected them with us, and they also, we formalized them. We even help them in getting, and we work with UNDP also, that matter. Their centers also are connected in our ecosystem. And then the recyclers. So we connect the recyclers also into that. There are thousands of recyclers, formal recyclers I'm talking about. Their challenge is that they don't know, there is no predictability for them for the material. They don't know how much material I will get tomorrow, because it is completely informal, completely disconnected. They have 10 supply chain guys, 100 suppliers, and it's very difficult for them to predict the next month's supply or this week's supply. So we said, here is the solution. Just log in here. We have thousands of people's material here. Just buy, and we're connecting you with both of them. So I think that approach has really worked. Our approach was not to replicate anybody's service. Everybody is there. We want them to exist. We just connected the right stakeholders, removed a couple of unnecessarily stakeholders in between. So in the value chain, what we saw that after generator to the recycler in the plastic, there are 7 to 8 people. It changes hand 7 to 8 times. We really removed some of them, which were really not adding any value. The collector is very important. The guy who's segregating it, processing it is very important. But then there are many people in between who are sitting in between because of their financial power or their muscle power. So we just made them irrelevant in the system and brought more value to the people who are doing the ground level work. So that's our approach towards solving this problem.
Yeah, wonderful, Abhay. I think one takeaway from the discussion with you so far has been about the data, and India lacks in the collection of data, which is, I think, very, very important to understand here. Because unless we have data, unless we have the right figures, we will not be able to come to a conclusion that what model suits the best to India. I think that's very, very important. Welcome, Mr. Sodi. I'm so thankful that you have joined well in time, despite the kind of situation you were in. Sir, you are on
Well,
mute.
good afternoon. Good afternoon to all
Yeah.
of you. Good afternoon, Chris and fellow colleagues. And Abhay,
Good afternoon, sir.
thank you.
So, Abhay has been discussing about the kind of problem and the issues at the informal collection industry so in India. And I see that UNDP has been working on the socio-technical model for making plastic waste management and its transition from an informal sector to a formal economy. Institutionalizing some of the Swachhta Kendras with the governance framework structures to improve socio-economic condition of the waste, because is something that you have been very actively involved for a few years now. Now, this is a big challenge, specifically when we talk about India. What are the efforts that are involved in a huge and a diverse economy like India when it comes to Swachhta Kendras and managing the waste?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You're moderating it very well. So let me come
Thank
to the
you.
question straight away. And I'm in a car. I hope you can hear it properly.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. Now, you know what? We have UNDP is working in plastics not because it's hot topic now. We started working in plastics in about 9-10 years back. And one of the fellow colleagues said littering is an issue. And plastic as such is wonderful material. Chris was giving you all details about it. We started to look into that what needs to be done in a multi-stakeholder environment. And catching back to 2010 and 2012 and 2013, 14, we went into a strategy that if the material has to be collected from different stakeholders, it needs to be sort of recovered in a way, and there it needs to be a value addition, and waste minimization strategies need to be put together, which today we are calling as the foundations for circular economy. So we started putting a couple of machines together. We took the space, and the fundamental thing we did was we tied up with the ULBs, because any waste generated in any city is under any urban local bodies which are mandated by law there. So they are a part of the whole system. We said, we are going to partner you. You're going to give us space. You're going to get the material to this place, and which is a sort of a material recovery center. We will put some basic machines of cleaning, shredding, and baling the different categories of material. So we started collecting the material, and that collection we started into different fractions. We had about 40 fractions in 2014 of different plastics and other dry waste, and which was all money, hard earned cash. Then we linked it up to the various recovery facilities, recycling, co-processing, and in roads also. The government in 2014 already had guidelines, CRRI, Central Resource Research of India. We already had those guidelines, and we started using them. Come 2017, 2018, when the EPR became under the new rules, and we were starting to really see, and there's when the private sector started coming to us and saying that, look, extended producer responsibility is going to play a role. That was a big challenge. And the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban came in, and they brought in guidelines, and the CPCB under the Ministry of Environment and Forest brought guidelines. But we never budged an inch, and we never took to trading as a means. We took to project activities. We organized the project, and we gave it to Coca-Cola, with whom we are working, or Unilever, with whom we are working, with HDFC Bank, who are doing under the CSR. There we gave them in a project form that we are going to do 20 activities in order to coordinate proper collection, proper segregation, and then proper disposal. So that was the aim. And as Abhay mentioned, we started looking into the strategies of how this data can be made into across the chain, and the waste value chain, or you call the waste supply chain systems, can give the basic traceability. So we used various incoming materials, divided them into different fractions, and then went into recyclings, and then started to generate invoices through the implementing partners, which are largely NGOs and community-based organizations. So all this to you, while I'm explaining to you, is very easy. It looks very simple, and it looks at the left-hand side that, oh, I can do it with the left-hand side, but it's not so simple. There are day-to-day problems. We were trying to, I'll take a minute or two more. We were not trying to only focus on the waste collection, segregation, and recycling through the use of these decentralized material recovery centers, but we wanted to give it an integrated approach. When I mean by integrated approach, we wanted to put the emphasis on the waste pickers. They are the people in India or a developing economy anywhere, whether it's Vietnam or South Africa or any developing economy, they play a major part. And they are sort of left on their own, and they are not mainstream. They do not have the identity cards. They do not have the basic health facilities. They do not have access to credit because of the fact they live in the very marginalized areas, or I would say uncouth positions. So the second major role we were trying to play was institutionalize them, as you said, and make them part of better health conditions, safe drinking water, taking care of their children, and also of basic health and hygiene, particularly for the women, while these people are largely women in the sector. And the third aspect which we wanted to focus very strongly was strengthen the whole accountability and the traceability of the material flow. And that material flow traceability would ultimately lead to give the extended producer responsibility, the rights that they have collected so much, and it has been verified. So in all, this is what we have been doing, and we have been following all to all guidelines of the Swachh Bharat Mission, guidelines of the CPCB, and in fact, I'm in the committee for both the drafting of the EPRs and on the other hand, various other guidelines for the urban and the rural sectors with the government. So bringing forefront the basic operational issues in terms of plastic collection, segregation, and recycling. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. I think it was very helpful to understand that what we talk maybe on the table is very much different from the ground reality, specifically looking at the kind of collection problems and the issues that happen at the ground. And it is very difficult. I mean, when I was working with my project on Project Zero about reducing the carbon footprint, I really found it was very difficult to bring that kind of awareness. And when it comes to awareness, I think, Chris, my next question is to you, where your company is working on combining every aspect of the journey of going green by focusing on energy reduction, water storage and purification, food generation, security, and waste disposal management. How would you define the journey of a household for sustainability?
Yeah, I think it comes back to first of all understanding that there's a much bigger picture at play here. So I've been frustrated for years because people have called me the recycling guy, and I say I'm not the recycling guy. There's a bigger picture here. There's a lot more to it, and I think people need to understand the opportunities that that this brings through, and you've mentioned a few of them there. So my focus really is that every household should be on a journey to sustainability. And the primary route to understanding that is education and the fact that there are solutions for all waste without exception. I'm still battling with nappies, but nappies, there's always one or two issues there, but there's solutions for that as well. So unlocking a secondary circular economy where waste is a resource will positively impact the lives of every citizen on the planet. And that will allow us to understand that each of us has a role to play. Too many people only have a limited view of what recycling is and don't understand how they can either contribute or benefit. So essentially, knowledge is power. We need to understand what it is that we're dealing with and what the impacts and outcomes are. And there are impacts and benefits that everyone needs to understand. Using waste as a resource has many benefits and impacts by, first of all, obviating or negating the requirement to look at expensive and unhealthy landfills and waste management. Waste is generally what I would call the hump and dump situation at the moment, and we need to change where we are from that perspective. But we also need to ensure that waste not collected for landfills doesn't pollute or litter our environment. So we need to make sure that it doesn't end up in our rivers and get into our environment. We need to understand the impacts of waste in the environment. It affects us in many other ways other than it just being unsightly litter that we're all very much used to. So there's the impacts. For example, waste can block our streams and stormwater systems in urban environments. It's a huge health hazard. Stagnant pools are created and trapped water harbors pests and diseases. Biodiversity is destroyed by the imbalance directly. That impacts our health. Water sources are polluted, carrying heavy metals and other contaminants, causing carcinogenic and other issues. There are blockages that exacerbate flooding, which results in more damage to property and even the loss of lives. So people need to understand that it's not just about the plastic waste. The littering could cause ill health or death of a family neighbor or member. And that's the reality of it. So we all have a responsibility to play, and people need to understand, and maybe that will put it into perspective. So littering might not just be an unsightly issue. You could be killing somebody. So that's a different way of putting it into perspective. But we also need to show people that there are benefits, and these are numerous. So when we talk about the waste economy, we talk about the outcomes and the impacts, not the actual recycling component. We need to move beyond that narrative, that naive narrative of what recycling is. So when we look about the outcomes and the impacts, I talk about issues around health, education, nutrition, decent job creation, skill development, infrastructure, agriculture, food security, water, energy, and these are all tied in as well to the SDGs. In fact, I can unpack the waste economy to illustrate the positive impacts and the benefits to each of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we've got to remove the narrative that we have we're looking at recycling and waste as an issue. This is something that needs to be integrated into a place where we can create a secondary resources economy and lose that narrative on waste. So every citizen and household needs to start to understand those impacts and benefits and realize that basically everybody would benefit from this change in perspective. And then we start to both measure and enjoy those benefits. And we can illustrate that through a number of different studies to look at each of those different points. But the fact is that we've got to lose that small-mindedness that we have about waste being a particular issue that is relegated to one of the lower issues. So we talk about big issues: housing, unemployment, job creation. And the reality is that the waste economy can unlock many of those. So we've got to just change and broaden our perspective with regards to that.
Yeah, Chris, I think you very well summarized by saying that there is requirement of change in the narrative, because this is something I have been also, it was a big challenge for me to make them understand about waste, because waste for everyone is waste. And how do we talk about, even if we talk about kind of raising some kind of incentives for them, it may or may not work. But I believe here in India, at least from my experience, says most of the waste economy, the recycling of waste is now being driven by the customer, by the consumer themselves, because there is a lot of awareness about recycling methodologies. And plus, if technology could really make that easier, then I think people are changing to the extent that, okay, fine, I may not take extra effort to go for, or maybe dump the things at a kind of a recycling entity. But if I have a proper technological background, or a technology that enables me to collect waste from my home, then I see that people are ready to segregate. And one of the very good examples I see is in Gurgaon, which happens to be one of the NCR cities here. And what happens is this is one recycler who's given up some kind of bags where people can put in, uh, dump their dry waste. The wet waste is segregated automatically, and he just picks those plastic bags from there, and then he kind of upload the kind of kgs. In kgs they would say this much plastic, this much cardboard, paper, etc., etc., and then you are incentivized in one or the other way. So what I see is it was the technological advancement which made the segregation easier, not the awareness of segregation by itself. So I think changing the narrative is extremely important there. Abhay, I think Recycle also works on the extended producer responsibility. And when we were talking about the ocean litter, it reminded me of a kind of a consortium that these big brands had in India. I think Coca-Cola, Bisleri, and Pepsi had a kind of a consortium where they have been working at the forefront in adoption of the EPR policy. How do you rate the adoption of EPR? Because your particularly Recycle focuses on EPR in the Indian industry. What could be the possible ways to enhance the adoption of EPR practices in India?
Yeah, shall we? So I will. These are the two questions. The first one is the how do you rate the adoption of EPR in India? So I think EPR is just a 2-year-old phenomena. We all are aware. Like till 2017, this word was also not heard of by the industry. And I think this is one of the great initiative to taken by the government to really solve the plastic problem and circularity problem, because before that none of the producers who are really the polluters were responsible for the waste they were generating. So I think the EPR came in 2017. Even today we don't have a formal legislation for a plastic EPR, but I think that is under the way. The framework has come out and it's still in under the discussion. But what we see that the initial adoption of the EPR by the multinational companies is there. So if I'm not wrong, there are around 400 companies who have applied for the PWM registrations with the Central Pollution Control Board. But that number is pretty small as compared to the 10 to 15,000 companies who are producing the plastic. So first the adoption is started, but started from the large multinational companies or large domestic companies, which are like more than say 4,000 or 5,000 crore rupees, $1 billion plus revenue companies. The middle and small are still not adopted it. It's early stage for them. The reason being they are not even aware. Many of them are not even aware about it. So it's because it's early phenomenon. So, but the multinational companies has definitely taken it up to a big extent. I feel that the new EPR framework, which has been published by the government of India around 4 months back, which asking for the inputs from the industry, and they have got 1,000+ inputs. So I think that framework, once it comes out and once it becomes a proper legislation, I think we'll start seeing the real adoption of the EPR policies thereafter. Now about the practices, like what you asked me the question about how to enhance the adoption of EPR. So I think in the current state of the way the EPR is fulfilled, it's not really a foolproof mechanism. Today, the whole objective of the EPR spent by the brand is to improve the collection. That's the whole idea, that the collectors should get incentivized, the aggregators should get incentivized, the people who are really doing the hard work in collecting that each bottle from the road, or even the consumer also to be incentivized for this aggregation, for keeping the plastic. Because the problem with plastic is that as soon as plastic is gone into a dustbin and the municipal ecosystem, this gets contaminated. And the cost of the quality of the plastic goes down, and even to clean it, you have to invest additional money, and it's unnecessarily expenditure in the ecosystem. That money is neither going anywhere. So I think to change that behavior, as even Chris and you were talking about in the question before, that we need to really use this EPR money to incentivize the consumers to do a better segregation and even drop it, not to put it in dustbin. The first change which need to be bring into the system is that. That's a point number one. Second, I think this whole EPR implementation should be digital. I think today this manual process is giving chances for multiple people, multiple producers to really play around in the ecosystem. So without really doing a proper fulfillment, because the objective of the EPR is that it need to have a complete traceability from the source to the recycler. But unfortunately, in today, what is happening that because this is new, people are not aware, the ecosystem is informal. The most of the money of EPR, I will say 60 to 70% is going to the recyclers for the recycling certificates. Actually, that money was supposed to go to the collector, not to the recycler. Recycler at the end of the day is existence because it is his business to recycle it. This is the raw material for him, but that is the shortest way for the producers right now to just go to a recycler and say, I need certificate of recycling on behalf of me, and that money is going to him. And I don't think that is going to be, that is the purpose of EPR. EPR purpose is to go to money to the supply side, not to the recycling side of it. And that's unfortunately is happening.
This is the loophole that the industry has.
That is the loop currently, but I said the things will evolve and more technology intervention, like a portal. Government of India has announced that they are going to launch a portal for complete compliance, where the people have to provide all the traceability, and mass balancing is another very huge requirement of the industry. So those things once comes in, I think we'll see a better adoption and better practices. Currently, the practices are ad hoc. Like I just go to somebody, say I need 500 metric ton, and he just prepares some document. He does work. It's not that everything is paper, but the real impact will only be seen when 80% of the collection money is going to the people who are doing the genuine collection side work. And that's something which will, I think, better practices will come going forward. Another point which I wanted to stress here, that and which globally has seen a successful model, is the deposit return scheme. I think somewhere I feel, and this takes care of that consumer incentivization in a big way. So if you look at the, because DRS is nothing but a part of the EPR, one part of the EPR. The way brands fulfill EPR, many use DRS for that. And DRS has been effectively implemented in 40 countries across the world. And all those countries have seen recycling ratio of more than 80%. And there are some countries where it has gone to 94%. Right. So one of the thing which even this current framework also talks about it in briefly, but this is something, the legislation driven system, where the state government comes up with a regulation that any producer wanted to sell something in their state, they have to adopt the DRS ecosystem. And in DRS ecosystem, how it works, that every product, like for example, if I buy a Maggie for 10 rupees, the Maggie will start taking a deposit of 50 paisa or 1 rupee against it. So that becomes 11 rupees. But that 50 paisa is not a charge. It's a deposit. When I consume Maggie, if I go give it back that pouch, I get my 1 rupee back. Now what happens in this, because we never throw newspaper, right? Even it is just 9 rupees per kg. Every household, all of the panelists here also must not be throwing the newspaper after reading in the dustbin. We never do that because there is a psychological thing in our mind that it's a value. There is a value for it. The same thing, thought process will come in plastic. Whatever awareness you do, we have done hundreds of awareness sessions. We have done thousands of people we have made aware, but it's really difficult to change the habit which has been there from childhood, right? So what we suggest that this DRS will say, oh, it's 1 rupee. I will keep it aside. I might not, when I return it, I will get that 1 rupee back. So this incentive, this DRS globally has been very effective. And I feel that for India to really see the real change and the quality of the plastic for recycling also will be much better. So DRS I see as a next best practice which can be, it's going to take time. It's going to be a few years from here. And at the same time, the minimum pricing is another point which I feel should be looked at. From the better practices point of view, because say take an example of multi-layer plastic, right? Multi-layer plastic which doesn't have any recycling value. For a rack picker to collect 1 kg plastic, he has to collect 300 pouches or 400 pouches. He has to just bend, collect the pouches, 400 pouches. If he is not paid 3 rupees at least for that effort, this is not going to work. What will happen? They will only pick the PET bottles and the MLP will remain there. So what is happening today, the brands, because of the price and saving money, the producers are trying to do the EPR fulfillment of MLP at 3 rupees or 2 rupees or 4 rupees. That's not going to work. That's not really practical. So government has to really bring in policy where there has to be a minimum cost for the EPR fulfillment, at least for the MLP perspective. So I think those things now people are understanding, and this also comes with the experience because EPR was something new. But I feel that we're in an evolution stage. In another 12 or 24 months, I feel that a foolproof system with the digital tracking, mass balancing, everything will come in picture.
Yeah, I think when you said digital tracking is very important, specifically in today's world when there is technology available, where it could be tracked right from the beginning, from production till the post-consumer waste. I think you have amply emphasized the fact that technology should be brought in, and that reminds me of the fact that Mr. Sodhi, you have been working on a technology supported knowledge management to promote cloud-based traceability when I met you last, basically focusing on accountability and digital governance along the waste value chain through your implementation partners. What management and operational challenges do you have you faced in implementing these material recovery centers?
Okay, now you're asking 2-3 questions in a sentence. Let me first come to you that the biggest challenge has been, as I said in the integrated manner, the biggest challenge has been to create a model which is socially responsible, environmentally beneficial, economically viable, and technologically institutionalized. You know, that is the real crux we are facing. The four corners of the square, we are trying to focus into building a sustainable system, hitting at the sustainable development goals. Chris really said it. We are aiming in all the 17 SDGs. The waste, plastic waste is a real resource. And people have to understand, both the panelists have said it, people really need to understand that they are spending and having a resource at their end. And if they're not socially responsible for that resource, it is getting into litter and it is going into the dump, which is burning. And it is creating a lot of issues regarding climate change as well as pollution. So what I mean by when I said economic business model, all that we are trying to create is if different plastics are coming, we are trying to segregate and put them to different use in a way so as to better the economic value for them through a digital system, which is an app-based system, which is also with what we are working with the Recycle. We are asking them to create simple digitals where we can document the material flow within the Swachhata Kendra. They have done it for us. We have used Mindtree also, and we are trying to see which is more easily adaptable to these local waste pickers. So the second challenge which we face is on the social aspect. While we are taking care, the plastic finds its way and it is, but are we socially responsible while we are doing this operational issue at the Swachhata Kendra? When I said socially responsible, are we giving equal wages? We at our Swachhata Kendra are giving them fair wages, minimum wages taken care of. We are not deducting the plastics which they are brought, whereas in the informal, unstructured business angle which is going on in plastics, these waste pickers are the one who are really, and today I am very happy to say that the government of India has recognized, and citizens across the chains in the cities have recognized that they are the waste warriors, and they have been given ample recognition in the system, and I'm very happy about it. So are we giving, when they are going to sell their material through the informal system, they are losing 20% of their product value. So that is what Abhay is trying to say. Cannot we create systems there within the waste flow so that they get the price in the right manner? Although he's hitting at other angles also. Now, when we come into these material recovery centers, right now there are hardly any material recovery centers, so-called in an integrated manner, where there are mechanical and manual, both clubbed into it. And are they environmentally friendly? That means, is the safe drinking water available for them? Are they so clean? Or they are centers to spread this COVID? Just imagine in the waste, all the material is being thrown in and is mixed, including sanitary waste, including COVID waste. How do these people recognize? So we are putting a lot of emphasis on the environmental social side in creating awareness, knowledge, capacity building of these people one by one. People are putting fire extinguishers. They don't even know how to use the fire extinguisher. So we are putting with the local fire authorities trainings for these people that look, you are in the most seriously vulnerable society. You are in the most vulnerable thing. We have all to learn these equipments. And it was an eye opener for them. They feel so secured. The mental peace in any work leads to better efficiency. And one has to realize what is that mental peace that I'm creating in the working conditions. We in our working conditions in UNDP are making such beautiful, oh, we can take 20 minutes break. Under the COVID, we are under enormous stress, and people like all of us, pardon me saying, including you, what are we emphasizing for working conditions of these poor people? They don't even know if the fire breaks, it's like a holocaust, and they don't even know how to get out of it. So we have done trainings of how the evacuation needs to take place. So what I'm trying to say is that economic, social, environmental, now the institutional part I said, we are institutionalizing them into small self-help groups. So small self-help groups, we are linking them to banks. We are creating them bank accounts so that all the transactions which we are creating to them are going in cash. And with that result, the government has hundreds of schemes, but they are bereft of having access to the schemes because they have no knowledge. So there is a large amount of the project which goes into creating these capacities. Technological outputs are available off the shelf. Different polymers, how they need to be handled, what sort of, yes, there are problems with the multi-layer, but there are significant ways how the multi-layer is also being handled. We have invested a lot of thoughts. I'm in the city of Indore, where one of our partners has invested his own money in creating condensed boards. It is not a new phenomena. I saw condensed boards in Brazil 10 years back, in 2012. And in my whole office in Delhi, we have used the walls. And Abhay knows it. He has seen the office. And I invite Chris also to come. And you yourself has seen the office. You know how it is. So what I'm trying to say is these are the real challenges, how we need to create. And this all creates very good jobs for the people who are bereft of it. Every day I have more than at the 40, 50 centers I am working. Every day my implementing partners with whom I am working, they are bringing in inclusive growth for more than 20, 30 at every center every day. So you can well imagine that how these people are coming to us and how they are breaking off the traditional system in which they were tied up to. We don't want to break systems. We want to invest in the informal sector as well. The small informal sector, they don't have any technological or for that matter of fact, access to any government. They don't have any incentivized system. And all this you can club in the theory of circularity, which uses the principles of reduce, reuse, recycle, refurbish, redesign, remanufacture. You can say all these. And we all can work out those modalities. But really to make these understand. And I very strongly say one thing, and I'll close if I have a minute. Do I have a minute more?
Yes, sir, you do.
Okay. So I very strongly say that why in the EPR systems, the brand owners or the producers are the ones who are to be put for this, that they are the ones who are bringing in the plastics. Yes, they are. Why do we leave the resin manufacturers out? They resin manufacturers can be brought under a purview of a cess, which can be used for creating recycling hubs. We have industrial parks in the country, in the cities, in the states. Why can't we have recycling hubs where there can be number of recyclers? There can be granule manufacturers. There can be for PET separately, for polyester, it can be separate. And what Chris was trying to say, the basic polystyrene, which is there in the market, and it is all being burnt. It is an absolute chaotic situation when polystyrene is being used and is being burnt. So this is what I say, why can't that cess be created to be used in a way for the, and why EPR only for plastics? EPR needs to go for every sector. In England, every square meter of cloth brought into by the manufacturer is cessed at 1 penny per square meter. So why can't we do it here? Why can't we create certain systems across the channel on the board? Anyway, I've said what I wanted to say. So there are challenges, but we are not worried of the challenges because we are also finding solutions with people like you. And I think so. There is no two views about it. Both the speakers have said it. Digital enabled tracking and tracing mechanism should be made mandatory in for the recycling credits that will enable a better authenticity of the EPR verifications, which it truly deserves. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. I think you have summarized it very, very well. I also am very glad that you are so positive about recycling and the plastic recycling, particularly wherein the most of the industry is so worried about MLPs, and you said there is always a solution to the problem. And you're looking at the inclusive growth and societal challenges, which is very, very important to consider as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Sodhi. And when we talk about enabling the recycling, Chris, my last question is to you, and we have a lot of questions coming in. I would open up the floor for question answers after that. So we have discussed about the opportunities and impact of material recovery now with our speakers. But what do you consider are the enablers that would drive sustainable management and operations of plastic waste?
There's a number of enablers that we need to try and embrace, and Pradyot has just explained some of those. So the EPR side of things needs to expand beyond just plastics. We're busy working on a huge number of different applications here locally. We were saying, why isn't building construction rubble under an EPR as well? Why are we not looking at more responsible management of our builder's rubble or our organic waste, and what are we doing with that? So everything should be under an EPR, and there should be a responsibility somewhere along the line. If you look at South Africa as a prime example, we talk about plastic waste, and plastic waste is the big issue. If you put it into perspective, in reality, in South Africa, we're landfilling about 108 million tons of waste every year. Only about 26 million tons of that is municipal solid waste. Some of the biggest portions are things like fly ash, mine slag, mine tailings, and of course the big industrial organic components that come from our agricultural sector and our processing sector. So each of those needs to come under some level of regulation where we are showcasing and understanding the opportunities that are with those. But there are different enablers across the value chain that we can look at. We talked about extended producer responsibility. It's a valuable tool. What we need to understand is that EPR is probably very different in developed countries versus developing countries. So Southeast Asia, India, Africa. The opportunity for an EPR is to underpin the recycling sector that creates a constant base of value to the collector, because without the collection, it's not going to happen. South Africa, prime example, about 90% of all of our waste is collected through the informal sector. Yet there's no support or management or oversight or any way of supporting and developing that system. So EPR is one opportunity to be able to do that, and that helps us avoid some of the peaks and troughs. We saw what happened when Operational National Sword happened in China, and they stopped importing the world's waste, and that had massive knock-on effects right throughout the entire system. So we've got to start looking at developing our own internal systems and making sure that we can manage and control our own waste. But we're starting to see that things are changing. So we've got a huge number of organizations that are working on different applications, UNDP being a prime one, a United Nations Environmental Program as well. But there's also the likes of the Global Plastics Pact, and certain countries are developing their own pact. South Africa has, there's a plastics pact in South Africa. Several other countries have done the same thing. But that really is driving the message home, and it's bringing in the corporates to say, listen, we think that you need to meet certain deliverables so that by 2025, you have X% of recycled content in your packaging. Or by 2030, that you would ensure that the bulk of your packaging would be recyclable. So designing for recyclability. Looking at collection models. One of the questions that came on the Q&A session, which I answered online, was about corporate social responsibility. There's a massive opportunity there for corporates to engage with communities and to engage with their consumers, to show that they are sustainable, that they are proud of their brand, and that they are looking at their own sustainability. So corporate social responsibility allows for opportunities where corporates, instead of doing the usual sort of corporate social stuff, which I often think is a waste of money, you know, that they'll sponsor a soccer team or do something different, but they can actually use corporate social responsibility to target their own internal issues in terms of energy and waste and water, and incorporate job creation through enterprise development and supplier development that allow them to be able to offset costs in terms of the waste and the waste management that would increase the engagement with community and with the local citizenry, and therefore increase brand awareness. So it's a huge model and an opportunity that we need to look at. But government also needs to play a role, and we're seeing global participation through the likes of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the Circular Economy Club, the World Economic Forum, World Circular Economy Forum, and there's a whole host of them where we're talking at a much higher level. But we need to bring it down to implementable level. And that comes down to understanding that in order to create the opportunity around the recycling, you need to look at the supply and the demand side of things. So that comes down to issues around supply chain management, for example. Builders Rubble is a prime example in South Africa. If we put out there that if they stipulated that every new road that is built must have at least 30% crushed Builders Rubble in the subbase, obviously meeting engineering requirements, it would obliterate millions of tons of Builders Rubble from landfills. And that obviously, you've got an inert waste filling up a valuable resource. So there's opportunities, and that can be driven through supply chain. It can be driven through green procurement, preferential green procurement. But also we need to look at material specification. How do we change in terms of understanding the opportunities for circularity with waste as a resource if we're not creating the markets for those resources? So material specification, extended producer responsibility, these are all components and enablers that will allow us to unpack those opportunities and create the markets for what we're looking at. One of the ones I'm working on at the moment, for example, glass is a primary example. I know this is mostly plastic, but glass can be used from a multitude of sources. We've got 32 different applications for crushed glass, from water filtration, sandblasting, grit aggregates, flooring systems, kitchen countertops. There's multiple things you can do with glass, but we don't do it because we haven't thought about it. So again, it gives opportunities for community project development. It gives opportunities where corporates can engage with communities to say, we've got a little technology here. Let's enable a community participation group or a small SMME to now become the suppliers into the system that are solving and managing the waste problem. So there are massive opportunities that we need to embrace as individuals, as corporates, and as government. And these enablers are essentially what we need to drive to unlock those markets, because as clever as we are with technologies and other opportunities, if we're not applying that through a supply and demand model that's going to drive that market, then we're wasting our time. So there's big opportunities in waste, even the problematic waste streams. And we've got plastics looking at opportunities in energy through gasification and small-scale pyrolysis, applications in terms of alternative building materials, roads, plastic roads. India is working on plastic roads. We've developed them here as well. There are great opportunities for tackling plastic waste. Obviously, we need to understand that we're not exacerbating any other secondary problem. But that's where technology and collaboration works, where we need to work with our government sectors, we need to work with our academic sectors, work together to make sure, okay, what are we doing, where are the opportunities, and make it happen. So I'm very positive about what we can do. I just think that we're not pushing through, and we've got to create those enablers. We've got to push those enablers.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think one of the concerns that I usually have is to find out whether these solutions, the different solutions that we are coming out with the plastic waste, be it the pyrolysis or maybe the roads, is that a kind of a circular alternate to it, or have we done a kind of a life cycle assessment of that entire thing to see uh, if these are circular is very important, and I'm very keen to study that. If there is any study, I would be very happy to read it and find out the solutions that we are working there. Everyone around the world is now working on using plastics one or the other way. But which solutions are actually circular and sustainable is a very big question. And every single innovation that comes out has to have a substantial data uh, backing it, telling that this is a sustainable solution to the problem. I mean, not just a stopgap arrangement. Thank you so much, Chris, Abhay, and Mr. Sodhi. It was a wonderful conversation and discussion today with you all. And thank you for your views on the varied conversation that we had today. We have a lot of questions here, and I think we can take the question answer sessions now.
Hmm. I would like to thank all the speakers for their wonderful insights on the topic. And now we would open the floor for questions. So if anyone has any question, you can use the raise your hand option, or you can type it in the question and answer chat box. So we have someone raising a question. It's Mr. Vasu. So Mr. Vasu, you can unmute yourself and ask your question now.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Abhayji, for the wonderful information you have shared. And Abhayji, I'm very big fan of yours, sir. I've been following Recycle since the beginning, and I myself also work in the plastic recycling industry itself. So just one thing, I was, having concern about when it comes to the EPR. Whom should we hold, more responsible? Would it be the producers who are making the multi-layer films and everything, or would it be the brands for whom the producers are making the multi-layers and everything? Thank you very much, Abhay.
So I think, Vasuji, I think thanks for all the kind words. I think Sodhi sir has raised the point in his conversation that even the resin manufacturers also should be bought into the EPR thing, which is not been considered as of now and might come going forward. But that has been the ask from many industry people. But as of today, the current framework, which is in discussion, is only talking about making the brands responsible for the EPR obligation. And that's the reality. I don't think in the current framework, it has been considered that the resin manufacturers will be a part of it. But there are parallel discussions going on with ministry about this point, but not sure what will be the result out of it. But brands for sure has been like made it mandatory.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abhay. We have a question from Mr. Amritansh Singh. What can be done of polystyrene thermocol considering its lower density and huge volume? So, Mr. Amritansh Singh, you can unmute yourself now and ask your question.
Some problem with the thing.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question from Ms. Anuradha
Sodhi,
Jaising.
Abhay, would you like to answer the question though?
Yeah, yeah. So I think as far as the thermocol concern, it has as Chris suggested that there are 400 different types of plastics and each one has its own challenges. Easiest one is PET, so that it has been traded in a big way. There is an ecosystem does exist, but everything else, even the LDP, HD, they have their own challenges. And I think thermocol is to matter is the much bigger challenge because of its weight, because of the processing it requires. Even you fill a truck fully, it will not even weight more than 600, 800 kgs. And so the point here is that that also is under EPR. That's what we came to know about. And there are some brands which are trying to do that. And we are working with few brands. The EPR costing in this category actually goes up because of the higher logistics and processing cost. There are buyers for that. We know there are people on our marketplace, on our recycle marketplace, who are willing to buy this material. But the economical viability is an issue there due to the higher transportation cost and the higher collection cost. Because even for a rag picker to collect it is, after collecting so much, it doesn't get much. So to solve this, I think what is happening now that for each category in EPR, the pricing is different. Like I was talking in the first session, that for for the plastic like PET, which is like we're traded heavily, the EPR price comes down because there's a lot of collection transactions happen. But for the LDP, HD, it is moderate. There are few recyclers. There are recyclers. Number of recyclers also does not exist many. So the transportation, for example, for thermocol, we remember we transported it to Goa from Chennai, right? Doesn't make sense because there are not many people available. So I think the pricing will evolve as the more recyclers comes in. More if we have a thermocol recycler in every state, assume for a second, the cost might come down. So I think these things, because EPR is just a new baby, and every category I will get treated separately, and the ecosystem will get formed. Allow it 3 years, I'm sure by 2025, we have a more commandable EPR ecosystem in the country, which will take care of the plastic waste to some extent.
Shalini, can I come in for this and add a little bit to Abhay what he's saying?
Yes, sir, please.
So 2 points really. One, to what Vasu said, whether the producers or the brand owners are responsible. And you know, under the current EPR guidelines, the thought processes are that manufacturers should be taken up, resin manufacturers I'm talking, should be taken up, but they are finding ways how they should be taken up separately. But coming to Vasu's question, it is the brand owners who are making responsible, and they can share their EPR with their producers and others at the back end from where the material is coming. Because it is the brand owners which are bringing the plastic into the market. Yes, the producers or the film makers or the converters are acting a part of it, and they then combine themselves. Ultimately, it is the brand which is bringing the plastic into the market, and all those agencies which are bringing plastic into the market, they are responsible to meet the EPRs. And that's how single-handedly it is being done. And there are these EPR guidelines are, I don't want to spill out, but they are going to talk about different categories. So there'll be those categories which are less than 100 tons or 50 tons per annum. They create an escrow account, and the ULBs or the state pollution control boards will give them certifications to meet their obligations under a deposit of certain fee. So that's the whole EPR consent which is going on. Second thing is that one of the colleagues talked about polystyrene. Now, there is a basic fundamental issue within the industry. Are the industry and the government really pushing enough incentive to use the recycled material within the stream? And is the recycled material which is being used is of a less contamination? So are these fundamentals being placed and pushed into the system? Today we want PET, which is a highly uncontaminated source of plastic recycling. And that is also not being used for food grain, but that's being used for. Are the standards laid down to check the contaminations? Coming to polystyrene, there are fundamentally investments being made by the recyclers in order to tackle recycling of polystyrene. It can be compressed to a very lower extent, and it can also be bulked into bulk compression after compressions. And there are industries who are converting used polystyrene into using the less amount of fresh or virgin polystyrene into converting in next as a packaging material. So there are two views going on whether polystyrene should be banned as a packaging material, because largely polystyrene is being used for packaging, and whether we should really get rid of it. And there are two types of polystyrene. I don't want to get into the details, but there are a set of scientists who are looking very strongly into polystyrene, both in terms of its compacting, recycling, and reuse. But the question remains, is the industry and people like you pushing the system in a way that there has to be incentive in using the recycled material. If the recycled material is not being used and the price difference between the virgin and the recycled material is very low, why would anybody go and use recycled material? You get my point? Over to you.
That's a very interesting point, Mr. Sodhi, that you brought, because that is the kind of incentive for the industry to use the recycled plastic. And I think Europe has come up with that regulation of using minimum 25% recycled plastic in their plastics and rest virgin. So this is one kind of incentivization which is required in the industry and to promote use of recycled plastics. Thank you, sir.
So we have more questions
Could
coming
I add
up.
to that a little bit, Shalini?
Yeah.
Sure.
So just in terms of one of the biggest issues we face, doesn't matter where we are, is that logistics is the biggest issue facing the economic viability of recycling. You don't want to move plastics around. Polystyrene is the extreme example of that. But the idea is that we need to create a value chain. We need to create a systematic structure from small communities to villages to cities to regional areas, where you're creating a bulking system through that entire value chain. And there are very simple systems for either compressing polystyrene or ingoting polystyrene. But again, it comes down to making sure that the product is used. And polystyrene as a recycled component can be used for so many different components. It gets, once it gets ingoted down, it gets refoamed back into other products that goes into picture frames and even cornicing and other building materials for housing. So there's a value and an opportunity for all of that, but again, it's creating the markets. The issue in recycling is weight. So trying to transport low value materials long distances, and that's why we need to look at small scale systems that are community based, where you create this value chain that decreases or limits your the logistical costs in the system. Otherwise, we're going to have the same problem. So we've got to look at it from all levels, and the technologies are out there. They're there. There's no rocket science here. We just need to put the systems into place.
Right, Chris. I think one thing that you mentioned about is the decentralized kind of recycling centers. India is looking at decentralized waste collection definitely, and waste. I think compost making of the wet waste is now we are looking at more from centralized to decentralized system, and obviously they are more sustainable in the sense that it removes the logistics involved and the process is much faster. And I think what we are seeing here is my takeaway would be that decentralized recycling centers again are more viable to reduce the cost of recycling. Thank you, Chris, for that input. I think we have one more question. We'll take up that. Susanna.
So we have a comment from Dr. Bharat Jain. He's saying we are working on minimization of generation of plastic waste by promoting concept of minimizing use of plastic itself. And he's requesting our speakers to comment on the same.
Yeah, so I think who would like to take it up? I would just say that yes, minimizing the use of plastic is the most important thing. That's why we say reduce is the first principle of circular economy and sustainability. Very right. I think that's the need of the hour. And again, as I keep saying, the market is driven by the consumer at the moment, and the customers are quite aware of the fact that plastic use has reduced. I look at my locality, I look at my circle, and I see most of us, including my circle, has stopped using plastic one or the other way. So the kind of decrease awareness has reduced the use of plastic certainly, and I definitely stand by what you are saying, your statement.
Shalini, can I come in?
Sir, please.
Okay, let me put you, this is a brilliant point. Let me put it three ways around it. Okay, way number one. If you do your evaluation, I was talking to Abhay the other day, we were sitting together and discussing lots. If you do the evaluation, I will give you 40 parameters. and you will work out your footprint. Believe me, your plastic is used per year, pardon me for saying that, at the barest possible is going to be 60 kilograms per annum. Way above 11 kgs, what India is trying to profess. I did mine sitting right in front of him, and I tried to be true to myself, and I said, how many times of a bottle do I buy in a month? Bottled, any form of bottled water, whether it's water, whether it's soft drink, or whether it's any form of bottle. How many times do I order material from the Amazons and others? How many times do I pick up packaged goods? How many times do I pick up packaged flowers? How many times do I pick up the material in the packaged form at the shop? How many times do I pack and give it to my friends, the material? Now, mind you, these 40 questions are going to let you in, and there is a full-fledged digitized system. You have to just say yes and no, and they will calculate it. Go to the Google, make this available through your network to everybody. If you want, I can send it to you, but you can search the Google and find out. Me and Abhay went into discussions, and we found out that what is the population which is using high plastic consumption. Our consumption production systems are totally a mismatch in a rising consumer economy. Point number 2, that is where you will minimize plastic. Point number 2, when it comes to collection, when it comes to, yes, you have to create awareness at the household level. There is no doubt about it. And the collections have to be segregated and brought into it. And that is a value and all that, what you said and others said. But the second point is really at the material recovery center. When we are recovering the material, whether through a life cycle approach or through a end of life cycle, through co-processing and other things, when you are re-recovering it back into plastic, you are making it to reuse in the form of a granule. Yes, plastic, every time you recycle it, you have to add additives to make it strong and then reuse. So that is where the virgin is being reduced. So how can we place the incentive system in order to reduce the virgin plastics? And whether we are keeping the prices of the virgin and the things. Third part of how to create the reduction systems. If we can talk about what Abhay was saying about, can we create micro entrepreneurs within the system and within the waste flow chain, waste value chain or material flow chain or supply chain? Can we create small entrepreneurs which are informal kabadiwalas who can then sort of start picking up all forms of plastic and putting it to recycling? And that entrepreneurs will start earning money, and we can have all that systems which Abhay was talking. It can be a deposit scheme. It can be reverse logistics with the companies. We have to bring all these schemes. I am not having a passion around it, but I am anguished with the fact that we are leaving a country with more and more plastics for our future generations. And that's going to be very, very distressing. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
That
much.
was an eye-opener. Well, very well summarized. Okay, Susanna, do we have time to take one last question?
I'm not sure, ma'am. Do you want to?
Okay.
But do get those 40 questions. I'll send you.
I want that, sir. Please do send the link.
Chris is smiling. Chris, give a chance to Chris to speak. I tell you, we who are talking plastics, our plastic consumption is no less than 50 kgs per annum. Believe me, if we are in a materialism, consumerist economy. Over to Chris.
Chris, we would like your inputs before taking the next question. I don't think we have time. Okay, Chris.
No, I think he's quite right. I mean, the reality is that we actually have no real idea of the level of plastic that's coming through. We're not measuring it properly, and if we're not measuring it, we can't manage it. So we need to understand that yes, minimization is a vitally important component, but we're tackling that from a very very small perspective, we're talking about maybe some single-use plastics, carrier bags, the earbud sticks, straws, spoons. And there's some great solutions out there for that, and there's that needs to be embraced. But the reality is that we are going to increase plastic production by 40% over the next decade. So we need solutions, we need collection systems, we need EPR, we need all the other different models in there, from corporate social responsibility, to make sure that we do it. And I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we are going to be properly measuring it. If you just look at the global plastic supply output versus what goes to landfill, you'll see there's a huge discrepancy in terms of what people are claiming and what's actually happening in the ground. We have EPRs and voluntary EPRs in South Africa, for example, where they're claiming 60% plus PET is being collected and processed locally. But the reality is, with us working with the Plastic Civil Society and other organizations, and after every rain event, and we're down on the beaches cleaning up, and the stuff is everywhere, we're not picking it up. There's a lot more out there. That's where EPR is also important, is that it's not just the producers. What about the importers? So you've got to widen the net in terms of the responsibility. Solutions for the plastic, and designing for recyclability is key to all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. So I think we have more questions coming up, but in lieu of time, we'll call it a day here. Thank you so much, all of you. And once again, sincere thanks for all your valuable presence. We really appreciate you taking time out to participate in the event. And we look forward to see you all in our next session, which is on 12th December, on the topic Smarter Business Models in Circular Economy. You can visit our website and register for the same. It's been a pleasure being with all of you today. I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Abhay. Mr. Suri, a special thanks to you for able to make to this today. Thank